There's the word palmera, which covers this part of the body. It was not used in the New Testament. The word that was used is chire, C-H-I-E-R. It covers this part of your body. You can translate it finger, palm, wrist, forearm, elbow. Take your choice. About 400 years before Christ, at the command of Caesar, 70 rabbis were ordered from Jerusalem down to Alexandria to translate the Hebrew Bible into Greek. You can still purchase that book. There's probably a copy in the pastor's library. The Greek translation of the Hebrew Scripture. The word chire, same word, used many times. Somewhere in Chronicles, one of the kings wore a ring on his. It refers to the joints of the chire. And in Genesis 24, Eliezer, Abraham's servant, was ordered north into Syria to purchase a wife for Isaac. He gave Rebekah gold bangles, bracelets. She put them on her chire. Where do you girls wear your bracelets? It's identically the same word. Our only problem was that until 1979, we did not know how to crucify anyone. Everything that we've ever taught or been taught on the subject has been based on the imagination of writers and artists over the centuries who've tried to put a story together with virtually no information. You see, Constantine outlawed crucifixion in the year 315. There hasn't been a recorded one since. We simply forgot how to crucify someone. Maybe we should forget it again? And then again, maybe it's doggone near time the church found out what a crucifixion is? You're never going to forget it. We throw the word around awfully loosely once or twice a year. We get maudlin about it. We sing about it. You know, the old rugged cross? And nobody had the faintest idea of how to do one. We had to learn. One of the doctors, older than I am, had himself crucified. Not one of those freaky things that you read about occasionally in the spring. He was tied on a cross. It was done under supervision. He was jacked up so that he could find out firsthand as a medical doctor what would happen to his own organs. He couldn't think of any other way to do it. He only lasted for seconds. They had to put an axe to it and take him down. The other one used skeletons. Today we could crucify someone and make it work. The only place that would work is the wrist. It does not conflict with the original language. And I'm assuming that most of you know, but I'll say it anyway, that the New Testament was originally written in Greek. There has always been an international language. Today it's American. If you can go anywhere in the world you wish today, and if you speak our brand of English, American East, you're not going to have a problem. It's a mandatory subject in Europe from the 4th grade up. The kids in the 7th and 8th grade speak more proper English really than we do. It's the language of business and culture. All the airlines operate in American once they're in the air. In the 1st century, that international language was Greek. Anyone with any kind of an education at all spoke it. Apparently, the writers of the New Testament intended that their work could be read in every language, in every nation in the known world. They wrote their letters and their work in the international language. Our problem is merely to interpret it, or to translate it. This does not conflict with the Greek. They used 2 nails in his feet. They put one foot flat against the upright, the way we've always imagined it. They drove a nail in diagonally, just below his ankle. It came out through his heel. They put the other foot on top of it and nailed the 2 of them together, lower down, through the instep. He ended up by taking 2 nails through one foot and 1 through the other. Loads of fun. But Dr. Gambisi proved with skeletons that that's the only way it could be done and make it work. If they'd used a single nail, the way we've always imagined it, the way the artists have shown it, the victim would have thrown his weight against it only once to push himself up and breathe. He would never do it the second time. Like the palm, the bones would have separated. It would have been over much too quickly to make the Romans happy. And this was intended to be the ultimate death. It wasn't. It came awfully close to it. The man in the shroud has an elliptical wound of about 4 centimeters between the 5th and 6th rib on the right. Is it a coincidence that 4 centimeters is the size of a Roman lance head? Whatever made it, lance, spear, javelin, penetrated diagonally upward and it went to his heart. A huge amount of blood that could only have come from the heart, as well as a thin watery substance, more water than blood, flowed out of the wound, separated, flowed across his back. The doctors say it proves 2 things. The man in the shroud did not die the usual crucifixion death of suffocation. Neither, of course, did he die of crura fracture, smashing the bones of his thighs with a club so that he couldn't push himself up to breathe. He died of cardiac arrest. His heart just stopped, for whatever reason. He was dead before the weapon went in. Who does it sound like? We had to do what I honestly don't believe has ever been done before. We had to look at the Bible in a totally unique manner. Tom DeMahala woke up in Italy one night in a cold sweat, rolled off of his cot, grabbed the clipboard, started to run. The one thing that nobody had thought to choreograph before the team left the States. His thought, what if everybody but him turned out to be a Roman Catholic? Seriously, can you see the headlines? Bias, prejudice. They made up their mind before they left the States. The team actually turned out to have been about 20% Roman Catholic, every mainline Protestant denomination, some non-mainline, Mormons and Orthodox Jews. But many said that that's only the way they were brought up as kids. In actuality, they were agnostic. Maybe God's real, maybe he's not, who knows, who cares, we don't need him anyway. An agnostic. But we have to look at the Bible not as atheists or agnostics or cynics or skeptics, not even as believers. The two or three of us that might have had the guts in '78 to stand up in public and say that we were believers had to be the devil's advocates. We had to look at the Bible strictly as research people. That's what I mean unique. This may truly be the first time in 2,000 years that anyone has ever gotten into that book without trying to prove something. And we weren't trying to prove a thing. We were not trying to prove it right, nor were we trying to prove it wrong. We couldn't have cared less. All we wanted were the answers to a couple of questions that in 1978 seemed to be good ones. Still do. Does that book say anything about a cloth with an image on it, or the mechanism that might have produced the image? Because I think you would believe that if this thing were really around in the first century, somebody should have recorded it. And yet on the surface, that's not the case. We had to take the entire crucifixion resurrection story apart, almost a word at a time, in the original languages, only looking for answers to our own questions. Go back as far as we possibly could, read everything we could find. Philo, Eusebius, Irenaeus, Polycarp, Flavius Virginius Renatus, the entire Jewish Talmud. There's a beauty for you. I'm not sure I really recommend it, but it's an experience reading it. 18,000 pages of Jewish law that jumps from one subject to the other on every single page. And there's no index. Guess who got that job? Oy vey. And that's a good Jewish term that means exactly that, oy vey. I've got the greatest collection of useful information you could ever ask for. I could tell you how to kosher meat, hang on a phylactery, burn a girl who's been caught in adultery, or bury somebody according to first century Jewish law. But you see, facts, truth, is the name of the game. Tradition is worthless. I know there are people here tonight that would disagree with that totally. But tradition cannot be trusted. More times than not, it's been proven to be a daydream, we'll say. You've got to get truth. You've got to get facts. No matter how long it takes, no matter how much it costs. Truth is really the name of the game. Even if it meant reading 18,000 pages word by word, and it did. But we had to start at the very beginning with a mysterious character who comes out of the woodwork a few hours after Jesus died. Mysterious in the sense that he's totally unheard of before, but awfully important to us. Because all four biographers of Jesus tell us, and if you don't know it, you should, that if any 3 or 4 of us were to walk up into the road tonight and witness an automobile accident, if we each did an article on it, if our stories were to agree, and anyone cared enough to read them, then by the laws of external evidence, what we've written is history. 3 or 4 people witness a current event, they agree, they record it, they agree, it's historical fact. All 4 biographers of Jesus tell us that Joseph of Arimathea showed up in Jerusalem a few hours after Jesus died, carrying under his arm what you girls would call a length of piece goods. A piece of cloth that could be used to make a coat, a robe, a jacket, or bury somebody in it. It's usually translated shroud, and that's not a bad translation. We still know very little about Joe. Arimathea is nothing but a bump on top of a hill a few miles north of Jerusalem. He was wealthy. He was a rabbi. He was in politics because he was a member of the Sanhedrin, the Jewish Supreme Court. He had the title of Counselor of Israel. That's where we stopped. In ancient Israel, there had only been 14 counselors. They had to be members of the Sanhedrin, yes, but it went far beyond that. If anything were to have happened to the high priest of Israel to cause him to be incapacitated in any way whatsoever, it would be one of those 14 counselors that took his place.